Ahoy! Guys, guess what? Me and the Switch 2 share a birthday! Well, not really. Mine's actually less than a week later, but we're doing that thing where we meet in the middle and celebrate together. So...
Well, my friend, it was a good run. The Nintendo Switch was a great console, truly the most convenient gaming device of all time. Being able to play it on a TV and take it anywhere with you was revolutionary. Sure, it had its problems. Joy-Con drift was a bit of a plague, and I personally went through 3 different iterations of them, and the fact that it feels like most of this thing's library was overpriced re-releases, but still one of the greatest consoles of all time. Probably the best piece of hardware Nintendo ever made. I personally thought the Switch could have continued for another 5 years of being Nintendo's main console. And before you say Soblev, no shot, the hardware is out of date and we need a more powerful version. My response to that, do we really need a 4K 120 frames per second console just to play Mario vs. Donkey Kong? Nintendo isn't a place for the highest tier of hardware, so that's why I genuinely thought the Switch could have continued for the rest of the decade. But alas, it is not. Nintendo wants money and this thing's time is coming to an end. So let's remember the incredible generation of gaming it did give us as we stick this thing in the closet and embrace the new era of Nintendo.
Gosh, this is exciting. I've never owned a console day one before, so being able to be a part of a group of people that own a console day one feels really special. I haven't made a video on a console since I made one back in 2021 for the Xbox Series X, so I don't really know how to do one of these. I guess I'll just talk about what caught my attention with the Switch 2 in a structured approach.
The box is smaller than I expected it to be, more squarish compared to the Switch 1 box. Let's start by opening it up the wrong way. Here we have the Switch 2 screen, our new Joy-Cons, pamphlet you'll never read, HDMI, Joy-Con straps you'll never use, Joy-Con grip, charging cable and its cube, and then we have the dock. This is everything that comes in the standard box, and it's everything you expect. It's all the same stuff you got in the Switch 1 box. I did also get the camera separately, but that's something for another day. But how adorable is this Piranha Plant camera? When setting up the Switch 2, it offers to transfer your data from the Switch 1 over to the current console. One method is by using the microSD card, but hang on, it's only certain microSD cards. Express microSD cards. You know, the more expensive one.
Ugh, they really want to bleed us dry, huh?
The Switch 2 is pretty much the Switch again, but with some adjustments. The screen is larger, the Joy-Cons are bigger, the hardware is better as it can now reach 4K resolution, 120 frames per second, and all them other impressive specs so we can now truly play Mario vs. Donkey Kong the way it was meant to be played. The stand is so much better. Whenever using the Switch stand, I always felt like I was going to break it, and also it wasn't all that steady on smooth surfaces. The Switch 2 stand is bigger, more spread out, far steadier, and gives us many angles to work with. Once again, the SD slot is underneath the stand, which I appreciate. Actually, all over the components are in the same spot. The USB-C on the bottom, power button, volume, vents, mic, cartridge reader, all in the same spot on top. And we also get an additional USB-C up here, which is handy to have. I appreciate that Nintendo didn't feel the need to shift these all over the place to differentiate it more. I still hate how with every DS, DSi, and 3DS I pick up, I have to find where the power button is. Ever had a situation where you were playing on a 3DS and you wanted to hit the start button, but you accidentally hit the power button because you thought you were playing on a DS? Don't lie to yourself, it's happened to you. Let's shift to the Joy-Cons.
Or shall I say, switch to the Joy-Cons.
Again, all the button placements are the same, and I love it. The shoulder buttons now feel like actual buttons and makes the idea of playing something on a singular Joy-Con not seem so bad. We do have an additional button on the right Joy-Con that enables game chat. I don't know if I'll ever get to use it, but it's neat to have. Now, instead of sliding the Joy-Cons in and out, here with the Switch 2, it's now magnetized and clips in. I thought it was gonna be stiff, but no, it's actually so smooth and satisfying putting them on and taking them off. The clicking sound is my absolute jam.
Now the big gimmick with the Switch 2 is being able to use the Joy-Cons as mice. Now I've heard a lot of people online be skeptical about it, which hey, is fair. Joy-Con drift did hit like a plague. I went through 3 different Joy-Cons myself, so I get the worry. But I guess I'm not stressed about it because I'm more excited about the possibilities.
Point and click adventures, mini-games, shooters. I think this new control scheme opens up so many possibilities. I really hope Nintendo actually utilizes this to make fun games rather than letting it flounder directionless like the Wii U gamepad. I do have to say, the battery life on these things are noticeably garbage. I used them for an hour and half the battery is gone. That's kinda ridiculous. Nothing like getting up to get water during a gaming sesh just to return to the controllers being dead. The dock is a bit bulkier and more rounded compared to the Switch 1. It's also extremely light, which, is fine. I was hoping it would have a bit more sturdiness to it. Like with the Switch dock, it felt like if I ever knocked it over, it would shatter into a million pieces. The Switch 2 dock feels maybe an ounce heavier, but it's still in the realm of if one of my cats ever accidentally knocks it over, I'm gonna start sweating. With the dock itself, most of the same ports, charger, HDMI, 2 USB ports on the other side, and the new kid on the block, the Ethernet.
Ooh, that's interesting.
The back completely comes off. I think I prefer being attached, but oh well.
Overall, the Switch 2 is a great looking console. Visually, it's not all that different from an OG Switch, which is fine. Nintendo probably already made one of the greatest and most convenient consoles of all time, so they didn't need to change much. They did exactly what they needed to do. They made it more powerful and made some small improvements. And the big new shtick with the console feels naturally implemented rather than being a gimmick that's being constantly forced upon you like the Wiimote was.
Looking at the interface, it's the same thing. I'm not complaining, I like the familiarity, the icon edges are all smoothed over, but I'm having this thought that switching from the Switch 1 and Switch 2 felt like upgrading your iPhone. Legit, from the data transferring process to seeing all my stuff pop up on the shiny new device, this makes me feel like I'm at a Sprint store.
Oh, those don't exist anymore.
This makes me feel like I'm at a Verizon store. The Switch 2 is backwards compatible with nearly the entirety of the Switch 1 library, which hey, again, is a good thing.
Something that really got me excited leading up to this thing's release was the concept of game share. I remember something similar on the DS used to always come in clutch, and the fact that they brought it back is exciting. Though I couldn't really get it to work when I tried to test it, and I have heard people online say that it doesn't actually work all that great, so I'm extremely hopeful it's something they can fix in updates.
Let's look at the game packaging. I like it. I'm especially a fan of the spines. I like how instead of all red, it continues the cover art, kinda how like PlayStation's been doing it. It'll make the games pop out more on the shelf rather than blend together. I'm a big fan of how the boxes look, which I say bittersweetly as this highly likely is the final Nintendo console to do physical games. But that's a whole separate conversation. Guess how I feel about it. And right now, I want to focus on the good. This is exciting. I love being able to start a new collection. I don't seem to have a lot of room in my Nintendo section. I guess I'll have to start simplifying my Switch games by taking out all the re-releases. The game cartridges are the same as Switch cartridges. They are the same size, they taste the same, they hold a whole bunch more data, and you might not notice this subtle detail, but the cartridges are now red. Again, when talking about the physical aspects of it, it's bittersweet. Like, yay, I own a physical copy of Mario Kart World, but it's not really a physical copy as the game isn't in the cartridge, but instead it's a license to download and play it digitally. Guess how I feel about it? Again, a discussion for another day.
Well, let's get on to another sad topic. The Switch 2 is expensive, but I don't think it's outrageous. Yeah, $500 is a lot of cheddar, but that's what consoles are costing now. The PS5 and Xbox Series X were $500 5 years ago. And this source probably is incredible, but I remember reading somewhere online the PS6 and next Xbox are gonna cost somewhere around $7. But Nintendo's supposed to be the budget console option. Yeah, $500 is what the budget console is these days. This is not the same thing as Sony trying to charge $500 for the PlayStation 3 in 2006. This is inflation. I grew up in New York and I remember rolls of sushi costing $2.50. Now, it's like $6. Things are getting expensive, man. But the price of the Switch 2 isn't much of a ripoff and it's not something to be losing your mind about. The price of games, however, is something to lose your mind about. $80 is absolutely insane for Mario Kart World. Like, I know I said things are getting more expensive and that's just life, but how the prices have risen in the last few years for video games is actually nuts! Tears of the Kingdom was Nintendo's first $70 game, and that came out, what, 2 years ago? It's only been 2 years since we jumped up to 70, and now it's time for 80? That's bullshit!
It's especially bullshit because Nintendo, and games in general, have had a nasty habit lately to release games unfinished and lacking in content, and just adding stuff later via updates down the line. But here's the thing, by the time we get to those updates, no one cares anymore.
The cost of games is gonna be an issue, especially if Nintendo continues this nasty habit of charging full price for remasters and re-releases. What will the repercussions be? Nothing, because people are gonna keep on buying them because we are all bootlickers. When it comes to the cost of other things, the Switch 2 Pro Controller is $85. That's ludicrous! The camera is 55, which isn't awful. It isn't great. Oh, and how much are Joy-Cons? Hang on. Guess how I feel about it. So to wrap up my quick thoughts, I really liked my first couple of days with the Switch 2. I think it's nice and sleek, it made a lot of improvements to the hardware, it runs really well, I love the Joy-Cons, and Game Share I think could be an awesome feature. They do need to tweak it a lot. Its biggest issues at the moment are the battery life and the price. Now, do I recommend you buy it? Yes, but not yet. My rule of thumb when it comes to buying a console is wait until there's 5 games you really want to play. Owning a console early does feel cool, but it's also not that great. There just isn't much available to really play. You're pretty much buying a console early just to play one game until something else that catches your interest comes out. So I would suggest waiting. But the problem with that? Scalpers.
In the first 3 years of the Xbox Series X and PS5 lifespans, it felt like you couldn't find these things anywhere because they were all completely bought out by scalpers who were charging you $1,000 for them. But the thing with those consoles, it never felt like you were missing out on anything because it feels like until last year, any big game that came out on those consoles also came out on Xbox One and PS4. There was never an,
oh man, I gotta get a PS5 so I can play the new God of War.
or,
Oh man, I gotta get Elden Ring.
or,
Horizon.
or,
Call of Duty.
legit, if you still haven't gotten a PS5 and you're still playing a PS4, you haven't really missed out on games.
Which is crazy! We're probably a year from hearing stuff about the PlayStation 6 and the Xbox Series 1 24/7 X squared. Yet it never really felt like we had an era of the PS5 and Xbox Series X. Now why am I mentioning those consoles? Well, with the Switch 2, it's different. Mario Kart World and most upcoming Nintendo games are only gonna be on this platform. So it's gonna have that, oh shoot, I gotta get a Switch 2 so I can play Donkey Kong Bonanza, or Duskblood, or Age of Imprisonment. So the Switch 2 is more valuable in that regard. The people who gave in and bought a PS5 for ridiculous money, let the scalpers win. Cause owning those consoles in those early years felt trivial, cause the games could be played on older hardware. The Switch 2 isn't that. You don't get the console, you can't play the new games. But then again, we have Nazis reincarnated, hogging all of them and then selling them at a ridiculous yikes! If it wasn't for the best girlfriend ever getting it for me for my birthday, I would have just honestly waited a few years to get it. You know, so the market for it could calm down and there'd be a lot more games for it that I want to play. Rather than spending the next month trying to squeeze fun out of an open world and Mario Kart World that I'm sure I'm gonna hate. Well, that was something of a video about the Nintendo Switch 2. I may have glossed over some major problems with it, but I guess I'm just not focused on it because I'm feeling the hype of owning a new console. And I'm a Nintendo fanboy. I'm sure as time passes I'll become more critical about it, but in the meantime, hell yeah! I guess I should wrap up this video talking about the Switch 2 by talking about one of its launch titles. And the Switch 2 has plenty of launch titles. But really, there's only one that really needs to be talked about.
Man, I love me some tech demos. Nintendo somehow made the greatest packing game of all time, and it was a simple tech demo with Wii Sports. They threw this thing into every single Wii console for free, and it became a cultural phenomenon. The Wii U had Nintendo Land, which was a pack-in game with only deluxe editions of the console, which was lame, but it's a shame because I think Nintendo Land is great and I really enjoyed my time with it. The Switch had 1-2 Switch, which was a whole separate game you had to pay $50 for, and gosh, it's bad. It's just a bunch of 5-second minigames, and most of them are at most just fine. The few good ones are only good for like 2-3 minutes tops, but then you never touch this thing again. $50 They somehow made a sequel. No shot I'm paying for it, and I'm the idiot who owns Doom 3 14 times. Now with the Switch 2, our tech demo is the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. It's digital only, guess how I feel about it, and it only costs $10. People complained about that, but after the last generation, I'd rather pay a piece of paper telling me to go f myself for $50 rather than pay for 1-2 Switch. And here's the thing, while I think Welcome Tour should have been installed with every Switch 2 the same way Astro Bot was on the PS5, I'm still not harping on the $10 because Welcome Tour is pretty solid. The gist is that we are a bunch of mannequins roaming around this plaza that is the Switch 2, and right off the bat, this premise is adorable to me as it reminds me of being able to drive on the GameCube and DS and Mario Kart. So what we do is we walk around learning about the Switch 2, playing some tech demos, and even knocking out some mini games. And let's break off into those three. The learning aspect comes in with how when we are roaming around, we are looking for stamps, and stamps are at every landmark on the Switch 2 device. These landmarks are mostly buttons and other important parts of the Switch 2's exterior and even interior. What we also can find are these little quiz areas that first teach you about the Switch 2's hardware and then quizzes you on them. And not gonna lie, it was actually really interesting learning about how this thing works. Even something as simple as learning how the Joy-Cons attach with magnets that are only inside the device, and what attracts them are the shoulder buttons on the Joy-Cons being metallic. I found that interesting, along with all the other fun facts about this thing's design, which makes you appreciate the architecture of it. We then have the tech demos that show off the Switch 2's functionality, like the HD rumble, noise reduction, visual performance, and then we have the straight up mini games, and these are actually a lot of fun. A lot of them use the mouse controls, and I have to admit, they are really good, and I was surprised how quickly I got hooked in the first minigame. Now, as much as I like the minigames that Welcome Tour has, there isn't much depth to them. Like, this isn't Wii Play where there are multi-stages. Nah, the minigames have slight variations, but you pretty much get the whole vibe of it in the first few seconds, which is a little disappointing. I do wish there was more game modes in here, but still, it's a lot better than anything once you switch through at you. With Welcome Tour, it was a lot of fun playing the games over and over trying to get the scores you need. There are some minigames and tech demos that require you to have a 4K television, the camera, or the Pro Controller, which is fine. I'm glad I got some use of this thing. I saw people complain about that online, which was weird and really shows that people will complain about anything. Guys, the game is giving you minigames to use that camera you spent a lot of money on. What's the issue? The fact that you didn't? Another day, I think Welcome Tour is cute, bite-sized fun. Should it have automatically come with every Switch 2? Yes! But $10 isn't an awful price point for this game that does have some value in it. While it's not Wii Sports, it's also not one to Switch.
Nintendo very well might be an evil corporation that hates its fans, but they get away with it because they're Nintendo. It can be leaked that they're using child labor in horrific conditions to create these consoles, and sure, there'll be an outcry, but then they'll just drop a trailer for Mario Galaxy 3, and everyone will forget all about it. That's the world we live in. They can continue to tell us to go f*** ourselves, and we enjoy it. But let's for a second not focus on the negativity. Let's look on the bright side. All the games coming in this thing's direction. We very well might be a year away from our next grand 3D Mario adventure. We have Donkey Kong Bonanza coming out next month. And maybe, please, 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 we might even get a new Donkey Kong Country. I'm sure we got some Kirby games coming our way, Pokemon, Metroid Prime 4 should be coming out this year, and honestly, the idea of being able to play that first-person shooter with mouse controls has me foaming at the mouth. Oh, Mario sports titles, Mario Party. We might very well be 6 or so years away from the next big 3D Zelda game, but I'm sure in the meantime we'll get another top-down chibi Zelda game. You know, maybe one that has you play as both Link and Zelda. Some new re-releases, and I know that might sound exhausting, paying for more of the same games, but with these new mouse controls, I feel like we can have so many point-and-click adventures come back our way. I am praying for Strong Bad's cool game for attractive people to make a grand return. It's unlikely though, because of the IP issues. This is why digital games suck. Oh, the GameCube emulator. If I wasn't already a collector and pretty much had most of the GameCube games I want to have, I would have creamed at the sight of this. Smash Brothers. That's an interesting case. While it seems like Sakurai might be done with the franchise, but also you never know with these things. My theory for what they're gonna do is, you know how for the Switch 1 we have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and they just continue to just add on a whole ton of content for? I think that's what they're gonna do with the Switch 2 with some kind of Smash Ultimate Deluxe. Just continuing Smash Ultimate and just adding loads more content over the next generation. And honestly, it doesn't sound so bad. Having the new DLC dropped every 2 months, that was an exciting part of the Switch 1 era. Waiting every Nintendo Direct to see what the next Smash character is gonna be. And this is a theory a buddy of mine had, but maybe with a Smash Ultimate Deluxe on Switch 2, they might actually finally give us a proper sequel to the Subspace Emissary. And for that, a full-on cinematic adventure featuring all these characters, that would make paying $80 for Smash Ultimate again really worth it. But besides that, I'm sure we have other awesome things coming. More WarioWare, Mario Maker 3, a new Splatoon, and I'm pretty sure I already heard some things about it. Mario Kart. Oh!